Imagine walking through a classic car show. Among the rows of shiny luxury sedans and sleek sports coupes, a two-door station wagon suddenly appears. Not your typical family car, not quite a sports car either, but something in between. It makes you stop for a moment. The shape is unusual, yet unmistakably American. Familiar, yet different. This is the Ford Del Rio, a rare wagon that dared to step outside the familiar mold. It was Ford's bold declaration that a wagon could also be stylish, full of character, and striking enough to turn heads on the street. Sadly, the market was not ready to accept it. So what happened? Why did Ford believe in the idea of a sport wagon, only to abandon it after just 2 years? Join us as we uncover the little-known story of the Ford Del Rio, the forgotten sport wagon. After World War II, America entered a period of population boom and rapid suburbanization. Young families moved to the suburbs, and the station wagon quickly became a symbol of that new lifestyle. They were spacious, practical, and could take the whole family on a weekend picnic without ever running out of cargo space. Ford recognized this and launched the two-door ranch wagon in the early 1950s. It was a highly practical vehicle, aimed at customers who needed something sturdy, simple, and reliable for hauling goods or handling everyday tasks. The ranch wagon was developed on a full-size sedan platform, making maximum use of Ford's existing production lines. With only 2 doors and a straightforward design, it appealed to buyers who wanted an affordable wagon that was easy to use and not overly complicated. By the mid-1950s, wagon sales were soaring. Nearly every automaker had its own wagon line, often built on sedan platforms. But most were 4-door wagons. The 2-door wagon remained secondary, simpler, and cheaper. That changed when Chevrolet introduced the Nomad in 1955. With its sporty styling, 2 doors, and bold design, the Nomad breathed new life into a segment long associated with the word practical. Pontiac soon followed with the Safari, aimed in the same direction. Ford took notice, and in 1956, they responded with a completely new model, the Park Lane. The Park Lane was not a replacement, but rather an expansion of Ford's wagon lineup. By offering it alongside the ranch wagon, Ford showed it was ready to experiment with different segments. They were no longer catering only to those who wanted a wagon for daily use, but also to customers seeking a fresher, more distinctive wagon experience that broke from convention. But just a year after the Park Lane's debut, Ford unveiled another new model, the Del Rio, which became the company's most distinctive 2-door station wagon of that era. The Del Rio was developed from the ranch wagon platform, but it no longer carried the same basic image. Ford positioned it as an upscale 2-door wagon, targeting younger buyers who appreciated individuality and wanted a car that could haul cargo yet still look sporty. In its overall design, the Del Rio borrowed many cues from the custom 300 line. Flat body panels, bold creases, and a long roofline gave it a mature, confident appearance. The front end was pure late 1950s Ford. Twin round headlights sat high on each fender, flanking a wide chrome grille that stretched across the full width. Every detail projected confidence, matching the spirit of post-war America. From the side, the Del Rio showed balanced proportions, with a long wheelbase, low hood, and a streamlined body. The roof height was just enough to keep its wagon identity, without making it look bulky. At the rear, the differences became obvious. Instead of the rounded shapes of the Chevrolet Nomad and Pontiac Safari, the Del Rio featured a squared-off design with upright rear glass, giving it a sharper, more practical character. This was an intentional choice, a refusal to chase the softer, flowing look of its rivals. Ford also equipped the Del Rio with a two-piece tailgate. The upper section swung upward, while the lower section folded down. This made loading cargo much more convenient, especially in tight parking spaces. If the Nomad and Safari resembled stretched coupes, the Del Rio stayed true to the traditional wagon form, only upgraded. Even when placed next to the Mercury Commuter, another two-door wagon from Ford's own stable, the Del Rio stood apart. The Commuter went with a sloped rear glass for a more fashionable touch. The Del Rio kept its upright rear window, simpler yet unmistakable. When you step into the cabin of the Ford Del Rio, you might be surprised. The seats were often upholstered in two-tone vinyl, such as red and white, blue and cream, or black and silver. The stitching stood out, creating sharp geometric patterns. These color combinations were not just for decoration, but also reflected the optimism and joy of an entire generation after the war. The dashboard stretched across the cabin, accented with bright chrome and metallic textures. A tube-style gauge cluster sat in the center, with large needles that were easy to read whether it was day or night. The control panel was neatly arranged. Many cars came equipped with an integrated radio, heater, and fan. These features were rarely found in standard wagons of the time. The large three-spoke steering wheel, sometimes with faux wood trim or metallic accents, gave the driver a solid feeling when holding it. The headliner was usually covered in light-colored fabric, contrasting with the dark carpet below. The effect was both airy and warm. The rear bench had enough room for 3 adults to sit comfortably. Details such as door handles, locks, and rear window cranks were carefully finished, showing that Ford did not neglect the passenger experience. The Ford Del Rio stood out not only for its design, but also for the flexibility of its powertrain options to meet the needs of each customer. In 1957, the base version was equipped with a 223 cubic inch inline-6 engine, called the Mileage Maker, producing 144 horsepower. This was the ideal choice for those who prioritized reliability, smooth driving, and fuel economy. However, for performance enthusiasts, Ford offered 3 V8 options, including a 272 cubic inch version producing 190 horsepower, a 292 cubic inch version producing 212 horsepower, and the most powerful 312 cubic inch version producing 245 horsepower. All of them used 4-barrel carburetors and delivered the deep, warm sound characteristic of the Y-block V8 family. Among them, the 312 cubic inch engine was the best choice for those who often hauled heavy loads but still wanted a smooth and easy driving experience in the city. In 1958, Ford continued to expand the range of power. The 223 cubic inch inline-6 remained, but its output increased to 145 horsepower. Along with it came new V8 options, including the 292 cubic inch producing 205 horsepower, the 332 cubic inch available with either 240 or 265 horsepower, and finally, the most powerful 352 cubic inch version producing up to 300 horsepower. With this configuration, the Del Rio became one of the strongest two-door wagons on the market at that time. Beyond engines, Del Rio also allowed buyers to choose between a 3-speed manual transmission, a manual with overdrive, or the Fordomatic automatic transmission. Depending on the configuration, this wagon could either be a smooth city cruiser or a true sleeper wagon capable of making many sporty coupes nervous. This flexibility and variety allowed the Del Rio to break away from the mold of a traditional wagon and establish its own unique identity in the segment. From its very first year on the market, the Ford Del Rio made a noticeable impact. In 1957, Ford sold 46,105 Del Rios across the United States, a very impressive figure for a two-door wagon. Remarkably, this number even surpassed the combined sales of the Chevrolet Nomad and Pontiac Safari in the same year. This showed that Ford had struck the right chord with a group of customers, people who wanted a practical car but still valued individuality and a distinctive appearance. However, by 1958, things changed quickly. Del Rio sales dropped sharply, with only 12,687 units sold. Part of the reason came from a shift in market preference. Buyers increasingly favored four-door wagons because getting in and out of the rear seats was much easier, especially for larger families. Meanwhile, the two-door wagon began to be seen as inconvenient and outdated. In addition, 1958 was also the time when the American automobile industry was affected by a mild economic recession. Consumers tightened their spending, making niche models like the Del Rio even harder to maintain their appeal. Even with upgraded engines and features, the Del Rio could not escape the common fate. Ford decided to discontinue the Del Rio after 1958, and full-size two-door wagons gradually disappeared from the company's official lineup. Later, the brand only kept the two-door design for some small and mid-size wagons such as the Falcon and Pinto. However, the Del Rio's failure was not unique. Both the Chevrolet Nomad and Pontiac Safari, rivals that also pursued the sporty two-door wagon concept, were quickly discontinued in the same period. So what caused an idea that seemed reasonable to fail so quickly? The answer lies in the gap between design concepts and real-world use. In the eyes of consumers in the late 1950s, a wagon was still a family vehicle. They needed space, easy access, and cargo convenience. When a wagon had only two doors, all of those advantages were immediately limited. The Del Rio looked fresh and distinctive, but the inconvenience of accessing the rear seats became a major drawback. For families with young children or elderly passengers, this was even more troublesome. Meanwhile, those who loved speed and sporty styling did not see a wagon as an attractive choice. They turned instead to coupes or true convertibles. As a result, the Del Rio was stuck in the middle, not practical enough to replace four-door wagons and not exciting enough to compete with sports cars. Today, when people mention classic wagons, the Ford Del Rio is not usually the first name that comes up. It does not shine like the Nomad, nor is it tied to a model line that lasted generations. But it is precisely this short-lived existence that makes the Del Rio more special to true enthusiasts. Produced for only 2 years, the number of Del Rios still surviving today is very limited. Most have been dismantled, modified, or simply disappeared over time. That makes finding an original Del Rio increasingly difficult, and this scarcity has raised its collectible value among vintage car lovers. A Del Rio in good running condition, with an original interior and matching engine codes, can be worth from $30,000 to $50,000 United States dollars, depending on trim and restoration level. Cars equipped with larger displacement V8 engines, automatic transmissions, and original color combinations are always the most sought after. However, the true value of the Del Rio does not lie in numbers or rarity, but in the feeling it brings. Seeing a Del Rio parked among a lineup of 1950s cars, it is instantly recognizable. There is nothing else quite like it. It is a reminder that once, Ford had the courage to try something new. And for those who have ever sat behind the wheel of a Del Rio, even just once, that feeling lingers for a long time. Not because of speed, not because of power, but because you are driving something rare, something with soul. The Ford Del Rio may have lasted only 2 years, but it left a unique mark on American automotive history. A two-door wagon that combined utility with sportiness, function with flair, tradition with innovation. It was not Ford's most successful model, but it stood out as one of its boldest post-war moves. Though the market turned away, enthusiasts today remember the Del Rio as a symbol of daring creativity. Today, every surviving Del Rio is a living testament to a daring chapter in America's car industry. Have you ever seen a Del Rio in person? If so, would you call it a market failure or a forgotten gem? Share your thoughts in the comments. And do not forget to hit subscribe so we can continue uncovering more forgotten pages of America's car history together.